Hi, my name is Carol Best, and my camera guy is Rich Best. Um, we've been giggling as we've been making many mistakes making this video for you. So please bear with us. We're amateurs at this, just like many people that are trying to do certain things nowadays are. All right, it has been 2 weeks since our last video, and we have learned many things. Well, number one, thank you for all of those that have donated masks. I believe we are nearing close to 300 masks being made and distributed. Unfortunately, the needs continue to grow daily. From here on out, I would imagine we will continue to see the same thing. The request for people to wear face masks when in public started just a day or two ago, and our request from the community has grown quite large. So, whatever you can do to help out making masks, we would love. We have been working with medical professionals, surgical students, testing out different prototypes of masks, and I think we have gone through and narrowed things down to reduce the spray penetration through masks. So this is going to be the new mask that we're going to suggest you make from here on out for distributing in Olmsted County and Rochester, and of course your family and friends. Use this wherever you can. The difference between this is it does not have the binding piece on the side, making it a little quicker for you to make. It does not have any of the nose pieces that were originally recommended for a little bit tighter fit. The reason behind that is because many of the hospitals are finding that the nose pieces don't hold up well under multiple washings. So they prefer you not to use these, whether it's going to medical professionals or support staff throughout the county. So that makes the process a little easier. It's one less step for us. The big difference is that the masks now will have a finished opening to them to allow the end user or the wearer to be able to insert a filter inside. Now, we can use any type of filter if you happen to have HEPA materials. Most of us don't. A coffee filter doubled gives us the best protection to this, the cone-shaped type of coffee filters, and we have a little video demonstrating that in a little bit. So that's the type of mask that we're going to use or to make. They are they have fewer steps. I'll say I won't say much easier, but there are fewer steps to make this mask than the original one that I had posted the video on. A few other housekeeping things. There have been masks made with like metallic type of fabrics to them, or that they've been thin. I don't know if you can see my hands behind here. So, well, look at this. We can see the pattern right through it. If you can see through the fabric, please don't use it. And this one actually has like a printed plasticky type of design on it. Fine in quilts, not great to be putting on our face and trying to eliminate things from penetrating it. So tight weave, it needs to be pre-washed or washed before you make the mask, please. That washing process will take away any of the chemicals that are used in the manufacturing of fabric, and won't you don't want the person wearing it to breathe in those chemicals either. So don't use laundry soap on it, and don't use a fabric softener on it. So we just purely want to put it into a hot water wash and just clean it all up. It is going to be 7.5 inches by 9 inches. across. Okay, so that's, as far as cutting, that's our only alteration. The next item is going to be finishing the top opening for the mask. So the first thing that I do with when I'm constructing mine is I'll turn the top at a 1/4 of an inch and then turn it one more time so we have no raw edges showing on our work on the outside. So let's go to the ironing board and I'll show you how to do that. So we're just going to take one piece, and I just eyeball that 1/4 of an inch. It might be something a little less, and I just turn it over. Got to turn off my steam, or else I'll steam my fingers. All right, so that's one turn. That's still a raw edge showing, so I need to make sure that I turn it one more time. And there we are. All right, so by ironing it down, it holds it in place fairly well. Let's go, and I would do that with the second piece, but for time's sake, let's go ahead and say that one's done. And I'm going to take this and top stitch it on my machine. So I am stitching with a darker thread just so you can see how this is put together. But if you'd like to use something that's that will match a little bit more, you go right ahead, or go ahead and have a contrasting thread. It doesn't matter. So for this one, just because it's top stitched, I don't back stitch on this one. All right, so that now is a finished edge, and when it gets washed, we don't have to worry about any raw edges fraying. All right, so I have both of my pieces turned and top stitched. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit it with the iron one more time so it's nice and flat. I now need to mark my edges. So I'm going to come over here. I need to put them right sides together. And I'm going to use I happen to use friction pens. The friction pens mark just like a regular ballpoint pen, but when you iron them, they go away. And then I'm just using a regular sewing gauge. Now I mark at 3/4 of an inch first. So I just put the slide at 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and mark on from my bottom of my piece and all 4 corners. What I'm doing is I'm marking where my elastic is going to get inserted once I turn the piece. Oops. All right, so that's where the edge is, but I leave a 1/2 inch opening, so I'm going to bring my gauge down to 1/2 of an inch, even though my elastic's actually a 1/4 of an inch. It just gives me a little extra room when I'm putting that elastic into place. All right, I only have to mark one side of my piece because that's the only side that I need to see. Last thing I'm going to do is make sure that those top 2 pieces are right on top of each other. this is 9 inches wide, and I'm going to leave an opening of 3 inches. So I'm going to mark from edge to inside at 3 inches on both sides. So I'm going to just bring my gauge down to 3 inches. Of course, whatever ruler, tape measure, whatever you've got, use what you have. We don't have our hobby stores or sewing stores open any longer for the time being. So use what you have. So now it's a 3-inch opening, and I will start stitching at this edge here. Come to the corner, come down until that marking. I will stop stitching, bring my needle up, and hop over to this next marking, stitch down, and I'm just going to leave all of the openings without stitching so I can insert what I need to insert. One helpful tip, instead of using your standard sewing length on your machine, I drop mine down. My normal stitch length is 2.5 on my machine. I drop it down to 1.9. The tighter stitching will allow the piece that's going to be washed a lot just a little sturdier stitch. So let's bring it to the machine. And because I want to keep this as close as I can just where that stitching is, I need to bring my needle way over. Fortunately, I have the capability of moving my needle. So I'm just going to bring my needle all the way over to the edge of that opening on the foot, and I'll just stitch right on top of that line, or as close as I can. Now this time I do back stitch because this opening is going to get well used, and I want to make sure that my stitching is going to stay. All right, I'm going to bring my needle up and bring it back to the center, because my center of my needle to the edge of my foot, the presser foot, is 3/8 of an inch, and that's a nice size of seam allowance. You don't want to go 1/4 of an inch like us quilters are used to. It's just not, it doesn't give you a nice solid seam allowance for these masks that are going to be well used. Okay, so let's continue on. And I'm just coming to that first line, and this time I'm going to back stitch just a couple stitches, come back to that line, going to bring my needle up, and I'm going to advance my piece to the next line and stitch, back stitch, and away I go. And I'll just repeat around until I get back to the top, and we'll come back at that point. All right, so I'm just getting to the end of the top opening. Just going to back stitch that one as well. We'll go ahead and pull our piece out. Make sure to trim up your threads there. The next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and trim my corners, because just be careful you don't actually cut into that seam allowance. When I'm turning it, I want to make sure that I have a little less bulk in those corners. All right, so I will, you can see that now this opening is now finished, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So let's go ahead and turn this piece. I usually just grab one of the corners, put my thumb in there, and push my finger out, and then just keep turning the rest of it. So work your fingers in there into each corner. And grab something that is something that can poke but not go all the way through it. Like if I tried to turn my corners with this guy, it would just go right through the fabric. So bamboo skewer is always good for that. I just happen to have this little turner guy. And I just try to get that corner out the best I can. Some of them are a little bit more stubborn than others. Like this guy looks good. All right, my piece is turned. Now I can just come to the ironing board and I roll I don't think you can see that. I just roll that seam to the top, and then with my fingernail, I bring it down. It just gives it a nice cleaner edge, so I can just iron that down. So I'll do that with the rest of my edges. Once you do one or two of these, you'll find a rhythm that works best for you. This is where steam would be helpful. All right, so now we have this nice finished mask. All of the edges, raw edges, are inside of this piece. None of them are showing on the outside. All right, last for ironing, what I do is I will turn it, fold it in half along the long edge. Go ahead and iron that. What I'm doing is I'm marking the pleats. I keep turning my piece because I'm not comfortable doing it at this angle, but so you can see it, we'll just make do. I fold one of the sides to the middle, that middle folded edge, and turn it one more time and do the same on the other side. All right, so in the end, I have a top, middle, and a bottom pleat. What I can do at this point is I can pinch those pressed pieces, and I can take my pins and I can pin those in place. And again, I've gotten to the point of making so many of these that I very seldom use my pins anymore for this process. I just bring it right to my machine and pin them, and just sew them down. So you'll get to that point if you make a few of these. My apologies if my hands are getting in the way, but all right. Just make sure that you're not going over the openings for your elastic, or you will you won't be able to get your elastic in. All right, so that's the last pleat. And I'll grab some elastic here. 1/4 inch braided elastic is, and I'll just tuck that right in. Now, want to make sure that it's in far enough that, you know, a good maybe 1/2 inch, and all depends on how comfortable you are with your machine, if you need to have it pinned or not. And we can bring this to our machine. You're just going to push that right, you have to find the opening first, and push it in. Easy for me to say, right? All right, so when I have problems with that, then I just find something to open that up, and now it's much easier to get it in to that opening. So we'll pin that. I won't worry about pinning on the other side, so let's, where's our top? Our top is here. So I'm going to, I actually am pinning this so I know where to start and stop. So I pin here and pin here, so I know where to start and stop when I do top stitching all the way around here. So let's go over to the machine. All right. And again, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to the edge of my foot, and I'm going to bring this at about 1/4 of an inch in, and off we go. And again, I back stitched that. I can be done with this pin. All right, and I'm going to pivot. This is what I wind up doing when I don't pin it. Oh, let's get that needle down so it holds it in place. And I can feel with my finger how far it's inside of that mask. I'm going to stitch down. I'm going to go over it one time, back stitch, 2, 3, 4, and one more time, 5. Now remember, we are at a we're at a 1.9 inch stitch, and just going to put that over there. There we go. Take your pins out as you go. Having a stiletto or a little helper to move that through your foot is helpful. I'm going to put that other piece of elastic, making sure that I didn't twist it along the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. I'm just going to continue on, and I'll come back when I get up here. All right, we're just coming up to the very end of our top stitching. I'm just going to back stitch that and bring it out of the machine here. Make sure you trim it up nice, front and back. We want to give these workers some quality masks. So if you have to slow down your pace a little bit to give them a nice quality mask, please do so. Last but not least, let's go ahead and iron this down. All right, somebody asked, does it matter if the pleats go facing the bottom of the mask or the top of the mask? And it does not. So, because the reason is, once they get unfolded, it doesn't matter if they're going to the bottom or to the top of the mask. Last but not least, let's give it a little quality control tug. Make sure that our elastic is going to stay in. So pull on your elastic. Make sure that you don't have any stitches that it's pulling out. And then you have a mask that is made. This opening will now be able to have a filter on it, and I have a video from one of the surgical students demonstrating that. So let's take a look at that. All right, that takes us through the entire process of making this edited version of our face mask. A few other things that I neglected to mention is that if you are using ribbon for your ties, I know some people are making tie versions of the mask. Please, if you're doing that, make sure your ends of your ribbons are knotted so that there's no fraying that will happen with those. And then if you're using elastic, please make sure you have elastic of the same quality or the same type on both sides. Some people I know are trying to use up what they have in their stash, and that's great. But if you have a stretchier one on one side and a less stretchy on the other side, the wearer has a really hard time with that. So again, try to think, okay, if I was making this for myself, how would I want it made? We appreciate all of your efforts. Again, now with everybody being suggested that everybody wear a face mask when they're out in public, that is the need for face masks has grown tremendously. So keep doing what you can. Make sure you take time to relax and try to enjoy yourself through this process. Oh, one last tip I discovered the other day. My machine was sounding a little off. I took off the cover plate and realized that I had not cleaned it in a while. So be kind to your machines. They're being overworked as well. All right, you guys, any questions, go ahead and email me at simplythebestquilting.com, and I will help in any way I can. Take care and stay safe.